Good morning, Bitcoiners. Hello, hello, hello. Hope you're doing well. I came at you a little early, so I'll get you some time to stroll in here. Let me make sure all my stuff is working correctly, Joseph, indeed, happy Independence Day to you. It is a happy, happy day. I'm going to a picnic, going to be barbecuing, got a lot of fun things going on. I hope people share their Independence Day activities in the comments. It's a fun one. We're going to be talking about Independence Day today, July 4th. There's a lot going on. People don't realize the symbolism. So we're going to share stories of Satoshi's forethought. What a smart guy. Morning, Bitcoiners. Happy Independence Day to you, bud. I know you're coming at us from Canada, but American Independence Day is for everyone. It's not just for Americans. It's a worldwide thing. Viva la vision, Defina. Indeed. Awal. Indeed. Good morning, Robert. Good morning. Happy 4th of July. How do I pronounce that? Sherwin. Pardon me. Sherwin. What's up, Sherwin? My mother's name is LeBlanc, so it's my mother's maiden name. Exactly as you spelt it, too, with the big B. Johnny Rico, happy 4th of July. Happy 4th of July. Morning, brother. Hope you're doing well. Happy 4th, Dave. Happy 4th. Good morning from Fort McMurray, Alberta, Canada. Love Fort McMurray. Love it there. Yeah, it is. Exactly. U.S. Independence Day is 100% for everyone in the world, right? I'll actually read this to you just for fun. This isn't about our narrative, and we're going to get to our coffee and everything. But while we're getting there, I had the good fortune of reading this so in 2017, I had a bunch of the CoinDesk folks over at my house in the Rockaways. I was living in the Rockaways in New York City, which is a beach, surf beach, believe it or not. And I had a barbecue there, and we had a bunch of the CoinDesk people over, and we were just talking about July 4th and this and that. And let me find this quote. So if you guys don't know who Elia Kazan is, Elia Kazan is the director of Streetcar Named Desire, East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause. Maybe he didn't do that one. So the point is, he did sort of some of the first and really popular shows in American history. And so he did some of the most and he helped create the Actors Studio, so the school that brought method acting to America. Marlon Brando was a student, Paul Newman was a student, Warren Beatty, James Dean, sort of everyone went through this school, and he was getting all the early Tennessee Williams plays, which were a really big deal. So he did the Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway and then brought it to cinema. On the Waterfront, I think that's where he won his big Academy Award, which was not a Tennessee Williams play. So the point is, this guy, Elia Kazan, was probably the most famous director in the United States in the 1950s. He helped rejuvenate Hollywood, right? Hollywood was having troubles, and he was someone who came around and showed how to make these small movies and things like that. So it ended up that he went and testified in the McCarthyism thing, and he became a pariah because he named names. He had been a communist, and then he had enough of the inquiry and all that. And he says, look, these are the names. Here's the people I know. Leave me alone, right? Some people never forgave him for that. And Elia Kazan, years later, wrote this, right? So I read this to the CoinDesk staff on July 4th, 2017, on the beach in New York, just talking about it. And this is in reference. So the only reason I'm doing this, everyone, is because Ahwal Atana was one of the first people here. And I was saying July 4th is for everyone, right? So this is in reference to me saying July 4th is for everyone. So this is Elia Kazan years later, right? So he's actually Greek, Elia Kazan, right? This is what he says, but he'd become an American citizen. He says, I think you and I, all of us, have some sort of stake in the United States. If it fails, the failure will be that of us all, of mankind itself. It will cost us all. I think of the United States as a country which is an arena, and in that arena, there is a drama being played out. I have seen that the struggle is the struggle of free men. And indeed, America is this incredible, high energy, all the stakes at play. It's a theater. It's all kinds of stuff happening at once, and we're going to talk about it today. But first, I just got to acknowledge before we get deeper into it that indeed we have a fully raised. The sun's totally up, right? Bitcoin, no problems, guys. It's running just fine. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. 1 second. Little kids trying to get me to help them with their toys. Wife is on her way back right now, so we'll be saved. All right, so before we get into the board, which is a board that some might recognize, it's a sort of copy of one that I've done before, and I'll get into the details of what it's all about in a second. For those of you who have never seen it, because I think the last time I did it was probably in December or something around Christmas, this particular board, but we'll talk about what it means. So first, I know what you want. You want to hear the fakest news I can find. Moscow time. What's happening in Moscow time? So, it is Independence Day. It's supposed to be about freedom and this and that. But I just was wondering if MSNBC was in the mood, right? Had they, maybe thought that some of their persecutions and the way they frame everything, maybe they had a bit of, a little bit of inspiration today to sort of let it go, right? Nope. The whole thing's about Trump, obviously. Now they've got 2 podcasts. It's not just the stories. They got podcasts dedicated to Trump. One of them is this is an actual MSNBC podcast called Prosecuting Donald Trump. In a new episode of Prosecuting Donald Trump, MSNBC legal analyst Mary McCord explains why it could be risky for prosecutors to enter into a cooperation agreement with Rudy Giuliani. By the way, the best summer hoaxes, right? Because this is the summer hoax, like Trump going to jail. The best summer hoaxes are when you can just do like the theoretical. What if Giuliani turns on Trump? What if? It's just going to be that all summer, guys. What if mutants at Professor X's school get involved in this debate? It's just going to be what if, right? So there's a lot of what ifs. Here's a good one. A new bonus episode of Maddow's chart-topping podcast, Bagman, is out now. Rachel picks up the story of former VP Spiro Agnew and his crimes inside the White House and explores the relevance to the indictment of former President Donald Trump. Rachel Maddow presents Bagman. By the way, the guy who helped me with the Bitcoin study in Canada years ago, he was a senator. His name was Irving Gerstein. He founded People's Jewelers. He went to school with Donald Trump, actually. So, and I've described before the room of senators that I walked into the first time I heard the Mexican rapist speech, and I said, he's going to win. And there was a bunch of senators in the room. This guy, Irving Gerstein, was one. Now, Gerstein, before he became a senator, and even while he was a senator, was one of the principal bagmen of the Conservative Party. He was a major fundraising guy, and he had the best speech, which related to this. So he was a big help to me in the Bitcoin thing. Got Bitcoin, was into Bitcoin, helped me do the study, was the chair of the committee, and I couldn't have got anything done if it wasn't for him. He was the one who helped me pass the statement that the committee said, which is Senate banking. So for those of you who don't know, I used to work in the Senate Banking Committee in Canada before I worked for CoinDesk and Kraken and Bitcoin Magazine and all these other things. So at the time, when we were doing the study, he was the chair, so I had him. I said, "This is a great publicity stunt. What we can do is we can use the op return script, and when we're tabling it in Parliament, we can also hash it into Bitcoin's blockchain, more or less like the ordinals or inscription thing." And this was way before we used this technique called op return script at the time, and that's what worked. And so I had the guys at Decentral, which is where Vitalik Buterin was working for Bitcoin. He was right. He had created Bitcoin Magazine there at the time. But Ethereum had just launched, or was about to launch. It was about a month away from launch when I did this. So this guy, Irving Gerstein, helped me pass the statement. Senate Banking Committee believes Satoshi's invention deserves a light regulatory touch. So he did that. So he's a real guy. And he had this great speech all those years where he goes, "I'm a political bagman," and he would embrace it. He would just like lean into being a bagman. He wouldn't be like, "That's a bad word." He was just like, "I love it. I'm a bagman." Really funny. You had to be there, I guess. Here's more. MSNBC, the 3 weeks since his federal indictment have not brought much in the way of good news for the former president, right? So he hasn't had any good news. Trump's former White House press secretary said she saw him show sensitive information to people in Mar-a-Lago's dining room patio, right? He was loose with secrets, they said. This is just perusing the MSNBC website. Did Donald Trump respond thoughtfully to his well-researched report? Of course not, writes Jahan. Trump botches Black history again with ignorant slavery post. First, Donald Trump suggested Jack Smith and Alvin Bragg were the real criminals. Now, as Steve Bannon writes, he's added Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to the list. It goes on and on and on, right? It's just days of it. We've also got CBC News jumping in here with the inflation question, right? So we're always looking for excuses for inflation in Moscow time. And if someone could share this one with Saifedean, I'm sure he'd love it. In a highly anticipated report about food inflation this week, the Competition Bureau called for more competition in the grocery sector, tying the higher prices to the limited option of consumers. So it's because we don't have enough grocery stores, guys. It's because we don't have enough grocery stores, right? That's the problem. We need more grocery stores, and then there's not going to be any inflation. If you had a choice of grocery stores, if there was like a grocery store here and a grocery store there, inflation would be solved. The economists know. They know. They're going to start subsidizing grocery stores. But this is the best one. This one is perfect for what we're going to talk about today. And it comes from the Bank of England, right? Remember, we had a revolution 200 and whatever years ago. Bank of England was a part of it in the sense that they were part of the British system already and part of the whatever was going on back then. So now the Bank of England, they might be getting criticized for whiplash interest rates, which we're going to talk about in a second with Balaji's post this morning. But apparently they're busy. So this is the headline. Bank of England says people of any gender identity can be pregnant. The Bank of England. They're really in their lane here. They're sticking to their lane, right? So let's get into it. The first big story that I have. Oh, no, we have one more fake news Moscow time. Just one more, right? So it turns out the White House was evacuated yesterday because they found cocaine. And it just happened to coincide with Hunter's visit. So a lot of people are speculating today, hey, did Hunter leave his coke behind, or what the hell happened, right? So cocaine found at the White House following Hunter Biden's visit. In a startling turn of events, the White House was evacuated after the discovery of an unknown item, which later tested positive to be cocaine. Well, that's good news. All right. So the first story that I'm covering today begins with Laura Loomer. So does anyone know who Laura Loomer is out there? I've never met her. I've always wanted to meet her. I'm a fan. And Laura Loomer, despite her screwing one of my shows once, she rushed the stage and got kicked off of the stage at Bitcoin 2021 in Miami, because we had Jack Dorsey there, and she believed that all the censorship was Jack Dorsey's fault, which I always disagreed with, right? So I'll always disagree with her on the Jack Dorsey thing. But she's a publicity stunt artist, but also a person of intense conviction, and you got to have sort of respect for what she went through. No one has been canceled as much as she has. I don't think, can use Uber. I think she's like, it's down to, there's not much, right? We're going to talk today about Nigel Farage and some of this unbanking stuff, but she was one of the most severely erased people in American culture. She's only allowed on Twitter since Elon Musk bought it, but otherwise she's completely canceled, right? So she's a big Trumper, and she hates DeSantis, even though she's from Florida, which is sort of typical of that fight right now, right? Trump has got everyone really anti-DeSantis, understandably, right? He's not a fan anymore, and so me personally, I've been warning that DeSantis is more woke stuff, right? Because equal and opposite reactions, Newtonian third law. If you go with the anti-woke guy, you're going to get what? More woke, right? So not that into him. Although if he became president, I wouldn't be upset, right? I don't think he will be, but I predict you're going to get more woke stuff out of him, because fighting woke will create woke, and we're not here for that. So apparently Laura Loomer said that he is helping hide bad information about Florida insurance companies, and that a few of them on the brink of collapsing. So she said something's wrong in Florida. DeSantis has helped these insurance companies hide that they are on the brink of disaster. And of all people who you would never imagine follows Laura Loomer, Balaji Srinivasan jumps in. And Balaji wrote a really interesting post and started responding and replying to her in her messages, right? And so she called it a scoop. I don't know if it's a scoop, but here's what Balaji ends up saying, right? So Balaji ends up saying that, let me get to it. First of all, this is a beautiful thing that Balaji put into words. He said, they're Bond villains. Bond, as in like bonds, right? So Powell is a Bond villain. Love it. I'm going to copy that one. So here's what he says, right? I'm not really interested in the endless primary battle between Trump and DeSantis for the Republican nomination, but I am interested in this recent salvo by Trump supporter Laura Loomer, mainly because I anticipate many more things like it, where Group A blames Group B for economic losses caused by the Fed. So he's saying here, this is not political, as Laura Loomer is saying, which I agree with Balaji on this one, right? Loomer is accusing Florida state government, and by extension DeSantis, of somehow being derelict in the management of these insurance companies. And the thing is, it's quite likely that many insurance companies are indeed underwater. But if so, that's the fault of the Fed, not Florida. Why? Well, one of the insurance companies named below is American Coastal, and Weiss Ratings reports they put 77% of their portfolio into safe investment-grade bonds. Problem is, thanks to the Fed, bonds are no longer safe. See, many financial institutions bought supposedly safe bonds from the government in 2021. But then the same government did a massive surprise devaluation of all the bonds it had just sold, screwing over its biggest customers, from banks to insurance companies, causing the largest losses in bond history, and saddling institutions with what Stanford researchers estimate to be literally trillions of dollars in unrealized losses. These bond losses remain unrealized so long as people don't come looking for their money. But when they do, like during a bank run when banks must pay out, or during hurricane season when insurance companies must fork over cash, then bad assets are sold and losses become realized. And then we all realize that the poor, dumb institutions that bought US government bonds in 2021 are actually insolvent, unless the Fed prints paper to cover a bond crisis the Fed itself caused, which it will do over and over and over again until the crisis devalues the dollar itself. Anyway, this is what happened in March 2023 when 5 huge banks died in quick succession, followed by the BTFP, right? So this whole thing about sovereigns causing the sovereign risk reminds me of the relationship that Bitcoin actually holds with the United States. And weirdly, they're related. And weirdly, we can see this intricate sort of dance happen right now with this bond story. This bond story is the start of a major conversion in organization and structure around U.S. Democracy, the republic, how it works. Now, here's an amazing thing. I don't know if you guys realize it, but we often think of the solstice, right? December 22nd, June 22nd. We think of the longest and shortest days as also, coincidentally, the days at which Earth is furthest and closest from the sun, but it's not true. The longest and shortest days do not link up exactly with the orbital structure of Earth around the sun. The day at which it is closest and shortest to the sun is not the solstice. It's actually a week and a bit later. It's today, July 4th. And also, January 3rd is when it is closest. January 3rd is the perihelion, the day at which the sun is closest to, or the Earth is closest to the sun. July 4th, on the other hand, exactly half a year later, is the aphelion, so the day at which Earth is furthest from the sun. And these 2 days link Bitcoin cosmically in a pretty interesting way. Now, one of the ways to interpret this sort of structure comes from a story that I have. So you got the little snake here and you got the eagle there. So it comes from a story that I have that many longtime Breakup joiners have heard many times, but I want to share it again on this July 4th because I think it's really important. And I think it's a really interesting way of seeing what's going on. So this happened at the Cryptographers Conference in 2017. And the Cryptographers Conference is a big Las Vegas show, about 50,000 attendees. It's been the industry convention that cryptographers have used and gathered at ever since public key cryptography was invented by Whitfield Diffie, Martin Hellman, and Ralph Merkle in the late 70s, and really spawned the entire public key infrastructure, public key cryptographic industry that the internet is built on top of. So that's why the conference has gotten so big. I interviewed Whitfield Diffie, the actual person who invented separating the key to public and private parts. I interviewed him for CoinDesk in 2018. But the 2017 show, he's up there. Every show ends the same. It's the cryptographers session, it's called. It's all these famous cryptographers in the world that have been around for a while. Shamir, Rivet, all these cryptographic inventors that are there. They get Moxie Marlinspike, Signal, and he's there too with his coin. But at this time, there was no coin yet. So they got up there, and of course, it's 2017, so Bitcoin is starting its run, and they're talking a lot about Bitcoin, right? They're saying, oh, Bitcoin, what's it going to do? Why is everyone talking about it? Why don't they talk about academic stuff anymore? And finally, this guy, Shamir, says, I like the Bitcoin guys, but they got to decide what they're going to be. Those Bitcoin people, they got to decide whether or not they're going to be a replacement for the gold standard or they're going to be a cypherpunk dream, right? They can't be both. And Whitfield Diffie stopped him. He said, whoa, 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 whoa. America, in its history, in the history of America, has regularly oscillated between being both a imperial power and a revolutionary force, and it never had to choose. America oscillates between two things that seem opposite, but are actually part of a continuum, right? Imperial force, which is what we recognize America as with its eagle and its imperial dressing, right? But that's not where America came from. It came from being a revolutionary power, the don't tread on me snake, right? And America, indeed, in its history, has gone between these two things. And what he said was America never had to choose. America never had to choose whether it was a revolutionary force or imperial power. It is both. And within the normal spectrum, it oscillates between these 2 points. But it is both one and the other and both at once. And it is predominant on one side, and then as in any type of orbit or ellipse, it comes back around and changes, right? And so he says the Bitcoiners don't have to choose. They can go about what it is they do and they'll be fine. And indeed, when you start to think of Bitcoin and America, you can start to see that these things are counterweights in order to propel this oscillation forward, this duality of being an imperial force and a revolutionary power. And every time I think of this sort of ballet, this dance between America and Bitcoin, I'm always reminded of this incredible cosmic connection, because this connection between January 3rd, of course, Bitcoin's birthday, is relating it directly to America on July 4th. So you got to imagine that Satoshi understood this cause. Well, you have to imagine. I mean, you can't say for sure, right? We don't want to say for sure, but this is pretty symmetrical, pretty beautiful. And it's easy to imagine both the October 31st date with the separation of money and state, the white paper being produced and its correlation to Martin Luther's October 31st Protestant Reformation doctrine, which he shared that day. So the separation of church and state, October 31st, the separation of money and state published in the white paper, October 31st. But then the actual birth of these ideas, right? The birth of the separation of church and state, the birth of the modern republic system, the birth of America being July 4th. And then, of course, the birth of Bitcoin being January 3rd. So you can start to see, even if you think of it in terms of Jungian psychology, which I often do, right? So in terms of Jungian psychology, what happens is every human has their ego and a shadow, and the shadow has to be able to manifest. You have to be able to individuate your shadow. You have to be able to encounter it. You have to be able to assimilate it and merge it into your ego in order that you don't get mental illness and bad spirits and demon possession and all these terrible things that can happen. By demon possession, I just mean, the malaise that comes in from not fulfilling your purpose in life and not having enough energy to put one foot in front of the other and all of these kinds of things. So the Jungian model, right, says that you can't suppress your shadow, and that shadow does sort of integrate into your ego along similar lines as this. It can be dualities, it can be opposites, right? It can be polarities that exist within that. So in the same way that a person can have an ego and a shadow, a country or a system can also have those things, especially if they're made up of people. And in many ways, when the money system was corrupted the way it was, right? Remember that a nation, in order for it to, just like a person, encounter its shadow, it has to count. It has to be able to count. And if it can't count, if it doesn't understand money, if it doesn't have any way to take stock of what it's doing, it won't work, right? And that's what having a degraded money system has done to America. America hasn't been able to encounter its shadow for 80 years now. And it's left with just words and ideas, but their meaning in a spiritual sense are completely devoid. That's why we can celebrate July 4th and go to a major news outlet in America and read nothing but the bullshit prosecution of a former president, because the ability for America to actually settle its psychological debts with itself and to square its actions, its activities, is impossible, because you can't follow the money. You can't understand what's going on. You can't see the things that you need to see in order to solve the problems you need to solve. There can be no assimilation and merger as long as you can't encounter the shadow. And if you can't count, you can't encounter. And that's what America has been left with all of these years. And that's why we have so much degradation. But as Jung pointed out, there is no full suppression of the shadow. It will come. It will sort of manifest itself and come out no matter what, right? Which is why it's coming out in all these crazy ways with cocaine in the White House and and all these other things, right? So America, bound in a similar dance as Bitcoin between these two things. Now, you can say Bitcoin, is it an imperial power? Well, of course it is, right? You can't argue with Bitcoin, right? It has a certain facelessness to it, but it is also a revolutionary force. So at the same time, it does have these two polarities within it. It does have the power to encompass the world. It does have the power to help the little guy, right? It's two things at once that might seem contradictory. Now, if you guys don't know the Hermetic principles, they're somewhat related to this concept. And I'm only going to share them, not because you need to understand each of them, but they do help inform this kind of logic. So The 7 Hermetic principles, of course, come from one of the earliest religions on earth, from Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes, 3 times great. You know Hermes as the little winged feet, and you'll see him a lot with the snakes and the chalice, the pharmaceutical icon, basically, which also looks like the double helix of DNA, right? Some people say he was often talking about DNA, but the principles that he shared, which in his mind and many people who follow it, describe everything you need to know about the world, even today, including Jesus Christ or anything else that helps inform your worldview. But they look like this, right? So first of all, the 7 Hermetic principles are that all the world is actually this psychological engine that we're talking about, right? It is all ego and shadow, and that all the world is a mind, and that the universe is actually psychological. So some people take that as saying that Hermes was an actual proponent of simulation theory, but that's just some people. Of course, the next one is correspondence, as above, so below, right? A very ancient idea, but one that stays true to this day. Vibration, that nothing rests, everything moves, everything is in motion. Of course, physics has taught us that that's true, right? So this is ancient information, right? But we've seen it's true. Polarity is an important one, right? That everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are actually the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes can be reconciled, right? So this is what I mean about America and this paradox that we're in. How can it be a revolutionary force and imperial power? How can Bitcoin be those two things? They are, right? It makes sense from the Hermetic point of view. The Hermetic point of view talks about gender as well, right? That everything is masculine and feminine, and gender manifests on all planes. Rhythm, right? That everything has a rhythm, and that everything has tides, right? So that's what we're talking about here, the tides that exist between these two polarities. And really the rhythm thing is all about the pendulum swinging, which everyone sort of understands instinctively, that everything's on a pendulum. Everything you see today about gender, homosexuality, all of this stuff exists on a pendulum, and we oscillate between acceptance and disgust, and then finally, the last of the Hermetic principles, cause and effect, right? That more or less everything exists in the world of cause and effect. There is a cause to everything, and everything has its effect. It might be hard to find. You can think of it as chance, but eventually it won't be chance. It will be shown that there is cause and effect to absolutely everything under the sun. So these Hermetic principles, right, I think help us understand that the context of this oscillation between imperial power, revolutionary force, is something that remains constant and consistent in history. Now, think again about what we just saw with the Federal Reserve and exactly what Balaji is saying, right? When Balaji says the bond villain, and that selling people on safe secured or safe bonds was, in the end, the most dangerous thing they could have done, starts to really engage this whole idea of pendulum, oscillation, cause and effect, duality, and is indeed part of the whole rhythm that Bitcoiners are betting on, right? Bitcoiners are betting on a massive shift of this nature here, that will help completely change how money works on the planet. Because as we understand, money on the planet today is an extension of the US state. There is no other money in the world, by the way. There is no other money on earth. Nothing else is real. All of it is relative to the US dollar, right? There is no meaning or way of signifying value of the Chinese money unless you do it relative to the dollar. Same with the Japanese money, same with the Korean money. The euro, of course, stupid, doesn't really exist, just a reflection of the US dollar. Now, what you do is you put a basket of garbage into that and say, oh, you have this much energy, you do this much for the economy, you do this much for that, blah, 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 blah. Energy counts, right? Other resources count, your work base counts, your population counts, of course, because humans with the birth certificate system and social security and income tax are chattel, right? You're able to borrow off of the heads of the people. So the amount of population you have has a lot to do with how much money or how much value or relative value your money has, which is insane, right? You're literally betting off the debt capacity of the humans who occupy your land, which is the sort of end result of all of this. And when the Fed Reserve starts making those bets, right, that the U.S. government still has a bit of wiggle room, what they're saying is every human being, when those bonds were getting bought and they were issued, getting bought, and the Fed Reserve was buying them and bought them in emergency from the Treasury, what they were really doing was making this whole system much riskier, right? And now, did you see that their plan is? So remember, it was, of course, the Treasury that issued these bonds. The Fed Reserve bought them all, didn't ask any questions. They raised interest rates, bought the bonds at the higher rate as well. And now our whole plan, this comes from the Wall Street Journal, right, is to send the person who did this, the Don't Audit the Fed, Janet Yellen, right? She's headed to China to fix Chinese-American relations. Janet Yellen, the buy Bitcoin girl, the face girl, right? Probably the least charismatic, least inspirational, most kind of revolting public servant you can find, right? The face, the everything, the clothes, right? Now, I'm not here to make fun of people's looks, but this is a real revolting person to be around, right? So she's the whole plan. That's what they got. They're going with her, and this is what's happening, right? US, China start talking again with global economic order at stake, they say, right? And remember what we call this, right? Revolution and order is a dancing a ballet, right? Bitcoin and the USA. So Jonathan Cheng tells us that Janet Yellen heads to Beijing on Thursday to meet with senior Chinese officials, showing that Washington and Beijing are talking again. The test is now whether they can settle into a new normal that avoids falling back into a cycle of acrimony. I think a huge risk to the global, this is Yellen being quoted, I think a huge risk to the global economy and security would be a real collapse of relations between the United States and China, Yellen said in a recent interview. We need to stabilize our relationships. We need channels of communication. In Beijing, Yellen will talk macroeconomy, climate change, and developing world debt, but broader tensions will loom. The U.S. is working to cut off some investment into Chinese tech sectors and weighing new restrictions on chip exports in China. Beijing, meantime, has added pressure on foreign companies, including banning some firms from buying Micron products, while moving to put key solar components on an export control list, which would hurt U.S. efforts to build its own domestic solar supply. China will unequivocally reject trade protectionism and all forms of decoupling and severing of supply chains, said the Chinese premier. U.S. and Chinese officials have tried to keep talks cordial during Yellen's meeting this year with previous Vice Premier Liu He. The two sides avoided contentious topics during the formal talks, instead privately discussing them during a coffee break. In Yellen, Chinese officials see a friendlier counterpart than the Biden administration, officials say. In the views of the Chinese Secretary, Yellen gets it. They wish other people in the administration would as well. So the whole plan is Yellen. That's it. That's the plan. To save America from becoming either an imperial wrecking ball or a dystopia, they're going with Janet Yellen. That's the plan, right? Now, here's the thing, right? Yellen ain't going to get anything done. Now, put yourself to next July 4th, right? What's happening next July 4th? We're in the heart of a U.S. presidential election. We're right in the middle of it, right? Everything's getting fought for, right? This is World War III, as far as America is concerned. This is the thing that Lia Kazan, right? The play where everything is getting settled. And I do believe it will be the U.S. federal election next year. So next year, right, we can start to sort of predict where things are headed. And I'll tell you where they're headed. I think I know, right? I think all we need to do is go look at the Bank of England, right? They're worried today. They remember what we said in Moscow time. Anyone can get pregnant, right? Anybody can get pregnant, remember? At the same time, they have nothing to say today about Nigel Farage getting unbanked. Lots of other people do, right? So he just said that he's tried his 9th bank, been rejected. His whole family is getting rejected from banks, right? So Nigel Farage, of course, was the leader of the Brexit movement, was a EU political envoy from the UK, like he was their whatever, won a seat or something in the EU. Some people say he's going to run to be the next prime minister of the United Kingdom. But it turns out they won't give him a bank account now. We had him speak last year at Bitcoin Amsterdam, this year, October 12th to 13th. He'll be there again talking about this stuff. And Doomberg today wrote all about it, right? So Doomberg says, here's what he says, right? So he starts with a quote from Simon Mikhailovich, and Simon is someone who lived in the Soviet Union. And what he's talking about here is that the airport security in 9/11, after 9/11, became much like the Soviet Union. And he says, he explains it like this: I can't impart it to anybody who hasn't been there. Standing in the security line in the airport, if you want to know what it's like to be in the Soviet Union, you are in the Soviet Union. In that moment, you are in the Soviet Union. You are in a line waiting for something, and at the end of that line, a lot of bad things can happen to you. People don't think that way. But in reality, though, right? So here he talks about, now Doomberg jumps into the article. He says, in the British parliamentary system, elected politicians are bestowed with significant privileges while executing their service to the public. Among the most notable is a far more expansive definition of freedom of speech that average citizens enjoy. A valuable allowance given the country's notoriously strict libel laws. Members can say practically anything within the confines of Parliament without fear of civil or criminal repercussions. That's called parliamentary privilege, if you guys know. It's a whole form of law, by the way. It's a separate form of law in British systems. And indeed, they can say it on the floor, not outside. The minute they go on the steps of the building, they're a citizen like anyone else. But in the thing, they're allowed to say whatever comes to their mind, and they can't be prosecuted. While the intent of parliamentary privilege is to insulate politicians from undue interference by outside actors, especially those of the wealthy and litigious variety, the advantage is regularly abused to score cheap political points using dirty tricks. Provided you have a poorly calibrated moral compass, it is a simple enough task to stand on the floor of Parliament, falsely accuse your political opponent of having committed a dastardly act, and then observe the resulting media frenzy with a knowing smirk. I dare you to repeat that outside of Parliament, is a common challenge issued by victims of such smears, but one that is rarely accepted by the cowards who make them. In the weeks after Putin launched his illegitimate invasion of Ukraine, having had any prior business associations with Russia suddenly became a potential liability. In the rush to sanction all things Russian, several politicians hurried to make cynical advantage of the developments. Among the more enthusiastic opportunists was Chris Bryant, member of the House of Commons for the Labour Party. In March 2020, Bryant took to the floor of the House to launch a vindictive missile at his old rival, and that would be Nigel Farage. So he says, oh, you took money from Russians, right? You should have done that. And now, right, he can't get any bank account, right? So here, and it even goes back to Magna Carta, right? So Doomberg says, even if it emerges that Farage did something to provoke this seemingly coordinated action by the banks, it will hardly diminish the profound nature of this developing scandal. By punishing Farage, his family, and his political allies without detailing specific allegations which they can defend themselves, centuries of Western jurisprudence have been upturned. The concept of innocent until proven guilty traces back to the signing of Magna Carta. Are we truly ready to give up our foundational rights so flippantly? But are we giving them up? No, right? Where someone is going to fall victim to them having been abandoned, and that's Nigel Farage now. But that it's even happening, that this is even a fork in the road on a path that began at Magna Carta in 1215, so 808 years ago, right? 808 years ago, things changed. A bunch of guys on horses said to the king, "You're cooked. Stop." You don't have absolute power. You got to ask us. We have our own armies. Ask us. And they start the Senate, right? That's where the House of Lords, which is the U.S. Senate, modeled after that, came from, right? So the first political order. They didn't have congressmen yet. They just had what amounts to senators in America, but they're lords over there, the upper chamber. And the upper chamber basically was created by these guys who said, we got armies. If we put armies together, king, we'll cut your head off. So you got to talk to us first before you do crazy shit, and then we'll get along. And that's Magna Carta, right? And at that time, it was put in Magna Carta, things like habeas corpus, right? The right to not have your body imprisoned, right? And as well, this concept of innocent until proven guilty, because the king's divine right to cut the head off of anyone he felt like was abridged in Magna Carta. He couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't kill the lords just because he felt like it, right? He had to go through some form of process, which was the beginning of courts and law and everything. Remember, the British don't have a constitution like we have in America, right? They have a collection of historic documents which make up the living, breathing constitution of the country, but there is no formal document. All power is vested in the sovereign, and there are certain procedures which the sovereign has to adhere to, and Magna Carta being one of them, right? So, so this idea of what's happening to Nigel Farage actually fits into most North Americans or most Americans' idea of where Bitcoin is headed, my idea anyway, of where Bitcoin's headed for the 2024 US election, because in the 2024 US election, this Nigel Farage story is going to be repeated across America. You're going to get way more attention into debanking, unbanking, everything like that. You can already see it, right? And it just so happens to fit, right? We always talk about how clever Satoshi was by timing the halvings to US presidential cycles. And that's indeed why I think the 2024 election is going to be the beginning of pure hyper-Bitcoinization and the pendulum swinging and changing from revolutionary force, from imperial power to revolutionary force, thereby fixing America, right? Fixing America. So that's what I got for today. There's not a lot of news out there, but this is what we're going with, right? This is what we're going with. Saying hi, Sherwin from the French island Dominica, West Indies. I was there this winter, Sherwin. J'adore la Dominica. Dominique. I was in right downtown, and I got really good freezies made out of the local cherries or whatever. Beautiful island though. The only place where you can get real natural local stuff, like local coffee. I got some there. What's up, P-Man? Good morning from Calgary. Oh, lucky guy. Yeah, I wanted to go to the Bitcoin Rodeo. You know, I tried to plan that last year. Didn't do it. Gently tap the like button. Phones are expensive. Yeah, Robert. Pitter patter. Yeah, they were running around this morning. The roots of the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Yeah, unfortunately, but true. True, Hammersaw. I agree with it. What if UFOs are real? Oh my God. That's a good one. I'll read it anyway. If Professor X uses mind control, why didn't he will himself to walk? Yeah, me too, actually. It's a good question, James. They are real. They are just products of American agencies. Yeah. I aspire to be a Bitcoin bagman. That's a good story, huh? I like it. Didn't they learn last in the Trump that any publicity is good publicity? No, they didn't learn. They did not learn. What does this say? Isn't BlackRock ETF proposal actually an attempt to manage a permanent public common, or is it a request for a Ponzi scheme? I don't know exactly, Solar Plexus, but I do believe you're going to feel it in on-chain transactions. What I hate about these ETF things is the paper Bitcoin and the no You don't really get to feel it on-chain demand, which helps price. But I feel like they're going to have to settle. Like the whole point of what the SEC said and not approving it or not giving enough details on the redemption side, to me says they are going to have to make on-chain purchases. It's not going to be like what FTX did. I think we had a real suppression of the Bitcoin price by FTX selling fictional paper Bitcoin in the last one. So there you go. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Cal. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Indeed, Muslim Bitcoiner. Hope you're doing well, man. Johnny, cocaine. Coke on the White House. Obviously, bonus old people can be more. If you guys didn't see it yesterday, there was a part of our Moscow time yesterday was in the UK. They came up with a new word, a more gender inclusive word for vagina, which is bonus hole. It's your bonus hole. So we got Brian reminding us yesterday. Yeah, the UK economy is a mess. It's not like the Bank of England. Any more important to worry about. Exactly. Yeah, bonus holes and anyone can get pregnant. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Justin says, imagine evacuating because of cocaine. Yeah, it's crazy. Good morning, CK. What's up, my man? Look at a picture of her. Look up her age. Something is taking a toll on her. I don't know who you're talking about, Winsome Hacks. But it's maybe Laura Loomer. Smash the woke by smashing the like button. We don't hate woke. You know, we're not so anti-woke. Sounds like pretext to raise interest rates. Yeah. Oh, this is going to be good. Insurance companies are bag holding duration mismatched treasuries at near 0% yield mortgages. Yep, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah. How long was Greg Foss telling people bonds are really stupid money? Yeah, but you know Greg Foss. So here's the thing. You know what? I won't listen to people who use children to any form of child to persuade people because it works and it's cheating. It's like cheat codes, right? So anyone who would make that argument, oh, what about the kids? Even if it's in the case of Bitcoin, I don't want to hear about it. Right? It's very manipulative, and I don't like it. I don't like. I get it for the kids, but that is one of the most. As someone who's interested in persuasion, that's often what we're talking about here: persuasion, messaging. It's like fear of death and fear for children are cheat codes, and they override human brains. But if you use them too much, you're wasting it, right? And so I try to tune Greg out for the kid thing all the time, but I know what he says about the bonds. That's the other thing he says all the time. But I'm not down with for the kids. It's not. Bitcoiners don't need to rely on such weak arguments as that. By weak, I mean they can suspiciously, there's better arguments than relying on people's feelings about children. There you go. Maybe DARPA can save Florida with their fancy weather machine. Yeah, we love the weather machine. We love the weather machine. If they can create natural disaster, couldn't they stop it? I don't know about that, Hammersaw. I don't know if it works that way, the weather stuff. Because, for example, we've known for a long time they can induce earthquakes by putting oil down tectonic fissures, and the oil will lube it up, basically, right? But you can't stop a earthquake. You can induce one. I feel like tornadoes and shit are the same. Like I feel like you can start one. Remember when Trump asked if you could nuke them? I think he did ask. I think he did. I know they tried to turn that into a fake. Now I would ask the same thing. I don't know why it was such a big joke. We could stop hurricanes. I know the answer. It's terraform the Sahara Desert. If you terraformed the Sahara Desert and made it green, there wouldn't be any more hurricanes in America or the Caribbean. So our friend from Dominica would not have to worry anymore. But they don't really get them there in Dominica, so he doesn't have much to worry about. I was thinking about this earlier, and that's why they skip days and days change each year, because of the discretionary time and actual rotation. Yeah. It's not the same, but it's not the longest day of the year, so it's a bit of a mathematical quirk. I don't really understand the relationship exactly, but something about the tilt of the Earth or something makes it not line up. So there you go. Hold on. BTC has nothing to do with politics or religion. Well, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure, Savco? In its pure form, but like everything, it's related to everything else in the world. So it has everything to do with those subjects. Everything. Shrooms will help that. If you want to know what inspired Satoshi, read what he put in the Genesis block. It wasn't about empire reformation. Yeah, but the empire is formed on the backs of the banks. So if he's talking about the banks, he's talking about changing the empire, right? He's not intellectually saying change the empire this way. But if you're talking about separating money and state, which you can't avoid talking about if you're talking about Bitcoin, right? Good morning, Bitcoiners. We got Brian with a US flag. We love it. We love it. Can't count on the dollar. No, you can't. Like the Prince of Persia game. Yeah. Shadow Man. Indeed, as Hammer saw, Bitcoin is for enemies. It is. It is. It is. Mitch McConnell probably dropped it off for under the cocaine. That's. I think Hermes has a few personas, though. Bitcoin Graffiti. Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. Yeah, exactly. Those are the 7 Hermetic principles. The yin and yang. The birth certificate thing is pretty. Yeah, the birth certificate thing has got to go. I think that is the foundation of what's going on here in the end. The birth certificate system. Imagine, like, what's going on? Do you know what it took me to get my second daughter out of the hospital without getting a social security number in the United States? And to this day, by the way, hers is the only passport in our family where the name is written with the first letter capitalized and the other letters small, because on your social security card, they rewrite your name all capitals. Now, mine's all capitals. My wife's all capitals. My first daughter, who got the social security number, is all capitals. The second one, who didn't get one, has no social security number. She's hidden from that stuff. I just pay the extra tax and don't care. She's the only one with a real passport, I think. I'm not sure, but it's kind of weird, you know. Why is everyone else's in capital letters? What the hell's going on? Hopefully she stays in jail, that little boy. Hey, we're not mean to Yellen. Come on. Little dwarf doesn't say anything stupid. Well, she is pretty revolting. Hopefully she stays in China. Indeed. I hope she does. The Fed and Treasury, the snake eating its own tail. Yeah, I like my snake today. I've done better snakes, but that's a pretty good one. My eagle's not so great. I've done better eagles. I didn't get its proportions correct. You know, the U.S. is in a bad place because they wouldn't be talking to China if they weren't. They certainly are. They certainly are. Bad place and a good place, right? The U.S. is, yeah, I love using the Yellen in a sentence, you know, Yellen. TSN, that's the target to watch. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's where they make all the good stuff, huh? Bitcoin is the gun. This play is really badly written. I'm ready for Act 3. Yeah. We're in Act 3, guys. We're in Act 3. He was a member of, which isn't parliament in any meaningful way. But anyway, yeah. You know what I mean, though. Oh, sorry, Johnny Rico. Well, maintenance tech will help you stack those sats. I hope you got a good day, Johnny. I hope it doesn't last long. You cannot be sued for speech in the House of Commons. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know if it is protected anymore. Diesel says. I think I think America knows they can't defend it. The only way to defend it is what Vivek is saying, right? This is one of Vivek's best ideas. If you want to actually solve the Taiwan problem, you just give them their own version of 2A and send them all kinds of personal weapons. They're not coming anywhere. No invasion happening if every Taiwanese has a gun in his house. Not going to happen. Which I would be there for. I would be totally down with that. The guy who made the false allegations against Farage was the subject of a scandal. Oh, really? Oh, no. Hilarious. Or Captain Underpants, as he was nicknamed by the press after it came out. I'm still good. Thanks a lot, man. Surely everyone knows that the semiconductors that Taiwan provides for the U.S. military. Yeah, they do. Will Doomberg ever connect the dots to Bitcoin? Very good question, Justin. I don't think so. I don't have much faith in the guy. The only person he ever quotes from the Bitcoin world is Ben Hunt, Epsilon Theory, who is actually mentally handicapped. Like at this point, he's mentally handicapped. Like I don't understand what that guy's problem is. He said a few good things about Bitcoin and history, but he was like the meme when the banks were suffering and people were getting into Bitcoin. Like he hates Balaji now. It's Balaji's fault, according to him, right? It's Balaji's fault. So I mean, and Justin asks if he's going to keep being a tether truther. He hasn't stopped with the tether shit for years now. Oh, it's going down. Whoa, boy. So I agree with you. I like his energy stuff, and when he gets into the censorship stuff, he's right on the target. But I agree, he just refuses to look at Bitcoin in any interesting way. And the only person he quotes about Bitcoin is this Ben Hunt guy. Now he's in the camp of a lot of these, actual Bitcoiners too. Oh, Bitcoin is in beta. It's an experiment. He's one of these guys. So let them keep thinking it's an experiment, and that's fine. Is the U.S. following France with its immigration policy? Yeah, more or less. Yeah, it's open borders, right? So yeah, it's not good. I said I had one of them made his way up to Canada. I'm right on the border. I saw one of them the other day. He was there for 3 days in the rain, living outside, in a park. Like, huge guy, So I don't know where he's from, but he ain't from Mexico, that's for sure. But he's not from America either. This guy was trying to get into Canada. So there you go. Yellen in China means Democrats are dumping Biden's 2 front wars. Could be. Yeah, could be. Loomer has been posting on Gab the entire time. Interesting to watch Bitcoin influencers actively ignore Gab. No, but Zabo was over there for a while. I actually know the Gab founders. Gab's only developer was CoinDesk developer. He did it as a side hustle. So I've known the Gab guys for a long time now. This guy would have been around with them, and we hired him in 2017. And he worked 2018, 2019, all that time with the Gab folks in Pennsylvania. And he's from Scranton, this guy. So yeah, I've never missed the Gab story or any of that stuff. And what I mean, but Robert, Laura Loomer is still the most canceled person in the world. Like no one got as canceled as she did in her time. That's what I meant. Yeah, of course she went on it. Right? Whoa. Hi. What's up, sweetie? Oh, she made me a nice picture. Very, very sweet. Very sweet. Okay, Daddy's coming. Go back in the room, and I'm gonna come. Right, I miss Mom. Yeah, Mommy's gonna be back in a few minutes, sweeties. I know you do. I know. I just want to look at USA was restructured. Yeah, of course it was under bankruptcy, hence the UCC. Yes, it was restructured. That's now we're getting somewhere. This is the story. This here is the story that no one really understands, including me. I only see pieces of it. No one's ever told it this way before. Yeah, USA current rendition built on banks. Yeah, exactly. Hermes is unrelated to double snake helix, I believe. Ah, okay. I get it. Yeah. I thought it. I get it. It's all isn't it all capitals because it represents you, the corporate. Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it, Hammersaw. Precisely. Yeah, but it's a new name. It's you, the corporate entity. And my kid without one has a passport. So, but why does it go on why does your corporate entity name go on your passport? There are some people who say you're just lost cargo, right? You are all lost cargo, and the government's allowed to take debt out on your name, which is what's happening, right? That's what it's built off of. There are some people who try and get that back through various means. UCC is the Uniform Commercial Code. All laws in the U.S. are UCC laws tied with Jekyll Island and the bankruptcy of America. I don't know about all laws, but many of them. And indeed, do you know how much I fought the coin censor? Do you know why there is even another lobby group in America for Bitcoin? Why there's still more and more? Because when Coin Center got into their UCC thing, I had a conniption. I was like, you guys are so stupid. What are you doing here? UCC, get out of here. And I started complaining to everyone that we needed another one. We need another one. This is not working. Like now they just created more, crappy blockchainy things, but we're still looking for the good, the good ones. But these guys embrace a lot of garbage. Doomberg is not one person. Is that so? I didn't know that, Hammersaw. Yeah. Gab impresses me on its sheer resilience. Absolutely winsome. Yeah, I'm a fan. I am a fan. I don't use it like I should because I'm stuck. I only really have time for Twitter and then one other, which I use on Nostr now. But RFK Jr. is a very eye-opening take on the board on the current state of illegal immigration. Harrowing. Well, I mean, agree, but he also said it's simple, and it is. It's not that complicated, right? And inevitably, the actual solution to the border is to just make Mexico and Central America rich by not bothering with China stuff and rebuilding it all down there, where they have better demographics, better workforce, and it will solve the border problem, right? If you start making all those microchips down in Mexico, you're not going to have any trouble at the border. Not at all. Letter of section in the report. Yeah, sometime I'll bring her around. I'll let the kids come on sometime. She was only in her, it's hot here, so she was only in her underwear. So maybe another time if she's better dressed. Haven't seen a law without UCC code, but I haven't done that. Yeah, I'm not sure. But you should. I mean, I've got some really cute videos of my kids that would go absolutely terribly viral, but I can't share them because they'd go too viral. And I have one the other day of that little one you just saw talking about Bitcoin and what it means for people, and it was like just in her innocence, amazing. They all often ask me about the board, and sometimes I record them as they try and figure out what's going on. And the one that I do sometimes where it's like the NPC face, and then you're stuck in the fake prison of two ideas. I've got one of the older girl figuring it out, the news outlets, the viruses in your mind, the exit being Bitcoin. And so she told me the whole story, right? I explained it to her, then she told it back to me, and I recorded it, right? And she says, and then you go and then you get out here with the Bitcoin. And then she looks at me and she goes, but they're going to be mad. And she points to the news outlets that are infecting the brain of the person, right? She did that on her own, right? You can see her, people leaving the Bitcoin. And then she looks at me and she says, they're going to be mad. That video would go absolutely viral. But my daughters are too pretty and cute, so I can't just share pictures of them. Yeah, this is what I mean. It's not just Central Americans now, it's international. Yeah, because they've heard that the thing is open. So I agreed. I've seen those pictures, and that's what Kennedy saw. It was mostly Chinese and all that, right? That's sort of what I think, but I think the border gets closed pretty quickly if there's no argument about the Mexicans. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't even know if it's an argument. It looks pretty bad, right? It looks like a Chinese thing for the drugs. That's what I see. What I'm seeing at the border is, now I could be 100% wrong. 100% wrong. What I see is a president who is easily blackmailed by China and is doing things that make no sense for the country at all. And now I could be hallucinating. That's what I see. I don't know if it's true. That's what I see. But who knows? All right, team. That's what I got. Now, everyone, have a great July 4th. It's one of my favorite days of the year. I love America. I love July 4th. I'm going to go to a beautiful little picnic. And Trump had it right on that one. Yeah. We live in North. All immigrants here are bringing the rest of their families very quickly. Jeez. They still don't come here to Vermont unless it's to get to Canada. But I keep saying, like, waiting to stick around for another 2 months. We'll see how long you last. Real hard to be real hard to plan protests and revolutions in this kind of climate in the cold. But indeed, everyone, have a great July 4th. God bless the United States of America. And this is going to be, I think, one of the greatest years in the history of the country. So let's enjoy it. Oh, what do I got here? Thanks for orange peeling the Brooklyn brother. Hey, great. Nice, man. We got an old Brooklyn friend. Goodbye. Billy, getting around, man. You were in Greece the other day. You were running around. I owe you an email, Billy. I noticed your email. I will reply. Just haven't had time. So once I see that, I will definitely chat. Cool, man. I got to see your picture, Greg. I miss Burley's. That was a great time. I miss Brooklyn. Those were the days. God bless the USA. God bless you all. Peace.